So let me throw it over to you and let's kind of maybe start here with the why. Yeah, a few years ago, you guys began to take seriously some of the problem of procrastination. And so tell me where you were when you started and maybe give us a little bit of the timeline as you found a solution and what you guys have built, especially from the process side.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for that kickoff, Matt. So, yeah, and just to echo what Matt said earlier, this is meant to be very conversational. So, if I could answer any questions as well as a user, I'm more than happy to do so. But here at Duncan Financial Group, so we are very planning centric. So we start all of our client relationships with planning and advice. We utilize Click Advisor through Cambridge. We've always been eMoney subscribers, so it was fantastic for us whenever they merged over to Click Advisors. So we lead our discussions with how we can look at everything for a client comprehensively. Because we use Click Advisor, what was beneficial for us is we were able to have a line of sight to a client's financial life, their net worth, their cash flow, but just as important, their estate plan. And we still continue to always do is we would put together a flow chart for a client so that we can show them the impact of their current estate plan. But showing a client what their current estate plan looks like compared to what they want it to look like, there always wasn't that match up of what those relationships would otherwise look like. And furthermore, whenever we realized that there was a gap between where the client currently was and what they needed, the only way to facilitate that change was through the implementation, most of the time, of documents, whereby we would either make an introduction or hand off that relationship to an attorney in order to have said documents put together. But what we were finding is, although we were having planning conversations and we had a lot of momentum with the clients, by the time that transition happened where they were ready to meet with the attorney, they would become so overwhelmed with the decisions that they had to make, really just the process involved, that many times the document execution just fell by the wayside. And even though that's something that is incredibly important for us, we keep it on our agenda every single time that we're meeting with a client. Unfortunately, it just a lot of times it would just sit on their to-do list and would never happen. So I've been at Duncan Financial Group for just about 8 years now. And knowing that we've talked about estate planning with every single one of our clients and our potential prospect clients every single time, we needed to find a solution that allowed us to help the clients a little bit more in that implementation phase and just get the documents taken care of that much faster for them. So that led us to really start vetting out having a system, a partner like Encore to help us facilitate the documents. And as we went through and vetted out some of the different options that were out there, and I'm happy to speak to that further, Encore was really a good fit for us. So that was really the catalyst to help to of why we wanted to look at an estate planning software in the first place. But I will say, as I think about where we are right now, every one of our client discussions, again, whether that is a brand new client that we're looking to meet with or a client that has been with our firm for decades, estate planning is a key part of our discussion moving forward. So every time that we meet with a client, every time that we have an annual review with them, we pull out their legal documents, whether those were created at Encore. I'm going to kind of go back to that part here in just a second. Whether they were documents that they've had in place quite some time, whatever they might be, we pull those out. We run a beneficiary summary for them and have a discussion on, do their current estate goals match up to the documents, the beneficiaries that are currently in place. If so, great. Then we talk about it again next year. If not, that's the perfect opportunity for us to go back and have a further discussion on what some of those changes are. Because we've now been utilizing Encore for a couple years, we are very confident in Encore process as well as what that has transitioned to our process. So it makes the conversation that much easier for us. In fact, the questionnaires that are available via Encore in order to start thinking about the questions that you need in order to execute documents, they're now just part of our agenda so that it's just very conversational with us moving forward.
And so tell us about as you made the transition to or adding this facilitation capability of getting the documents created. Obviously, you were pretty entrenched. So you started maybe on second base with a level of estate planning you were doing prior to that. So it wasn't a brand new conversation for your clients. or it wasn't something you were brand new to speaking about. And so as you started with Encore back in 24, what was the process you had to begin to create and how did you do that? Help those that are like, okay, I'm on board for wanting to do this.
Yeah.
It's got to be in a workflow. It's got to be how you run your CRM. I'm not sure which CRM you use, but how you did that, especially across your team, because we didn't speak to the size of Duncan. I know you're kind of an internal estate planning person. Maybe give us that backdrop a little bit.
So I'll talk about that. Let me talk about Duncan real quick, and then I'll lead that into kind of the process, which is very interesting because I think that was the key answer to the poll that you guys put out there. So just real quick,
Yeah.
Duncan. So Duncan Financial Group has been around for 40 years. We have an internal team of about 150 individuals. And then we are also part of the larger OSJ where we have about another 150 advisors. My role in Duncan Financial Group is I am the director of financial planning, which means that I help all of our advisors here in the office as well as our enterprise with anything financial planning related, whether that is just cash flow planning, tax planning, or estate planning. I help advisors plan for their clients' future. I also work directly with one advisor directly, my partner, so that I maintain his book of business, and that helps me stay very relevant to what client needs are from a prospect as well as an existing client relationship to make sure that I am just bringing the best ideas to all of the advisors that I work with. So Duncan Financial Group, we do specialize in everything financial related. We do personal insurance, commercial insurance. We have our own tax and accounting team, private wealth management, retirement plan, our own plan admin. So we really have the skill to be able to justify all of those planning conversations that I had mentioned. So my role is really to focus with advisors and clients in order to develop their financial plan, regardless of what that might look like. So when it came to utilizing Encore, really thinking about what that next step was going to be, that was my responsibility in order to make sure that we not only found a partner that worked really well for what we were looking for, but one that made our job very easy because we work with so many different clients and so many different advisors, and we didn't want something that we had to recreate the wheel every single
Mhm.
time. So taking that into how did our process start where it looks like right now? I will say, just like anything, in order for us to offer this, we really had to have the viewpoint of this was a marathon, not a sprint. And we didn't have to have all of the answers right away. I am the type of person that I need to know everything before I feel very confident in putting anything in front of anybody, whether that's an advisor or a client. So that was a little bit difficult for me. In fact, I spent days just vetting out the resource center, like the knowledge center that's on Encore. I'm just going to give a quick shout out. It's incredible. Like anything that you could possibly need, you can find right at your fingertips. But I took the mindset of I wanted to really understand everything to the point where I couldn't find anything new in order for me to create my first legal document. What was really funny is, Matt, you might remember, I actually called you and I said, Matt, I have a client that I want to work with. I'm not sure the best way to get started. And your words to me were, let's just get started. Let's just do it. And so what I found was, I'm just going to use that as a time to say, sure, a lot of people are going to go in and say, I need to know everything about Encore before I feel really confident in order to put together my first will package. And sure, I feel like that's important to some extent, but it's also important just to get in there and complete one. And if you have not yet looked at Encore's website, I strongly encourage you to do so. Leave aside the knowledge center that I just spoke about, just to put the information in for a will-based package, a powers package, or a trust-based package. They make it so incredibly user-friendly that it really did not leave a lot of opportunity for errors along the way. And what I found was just getting in there one time and figuring it out and identifying the process as I went along actually made it that much easier for us. So I just needed to go in. I did one will, went through the entire process from start to finish. It maybe took me at best 7 to 10 days, if that, from start to finish. And that includes like the first conversation that I had with the client, putting the information into Encore, to getting the docs back, reviewing them, and then have a client sign it. But that said, because we've now done so many of them and we've seen so many different examples and what works really well for us, we've been able to really scale how we utilize Encore moving forward. So to your point, we lean on our planning software as well as our CRM systems. So we use ClickAdvisor for everything planning related, and we use Redtail as our CRM system. But in addition to that, we just default to here at Duncan Financial Group. We are very keen on meeting agendas, and we have default, like just template agendas that list all of the information that we need to talk to a client about, whether that's data gathering or just making sure that we have those key points for a future discussion. That helps us really keep track of everything in order to say, what is the need that the client has for a document? How can we best implement that? And how do we maintain the steps of the process? Sure, we lean on workflows in order to make sure that we're going back to check to make sure that the documents are done and that when we sent them to the client, they reviewed them and that we have the meeting set up for the next steps. We have all of that in place, but that started by us just getting in there and doing one will and really leveraging your team in order to make sure that we did it correctly and efficiently.
Yeah, and coming soon to speak to that, because there a question from Justin just came up on Redtail integration. That is a high priority this year. We have conversations coming up with Orion. Somebody else asked about that too. That if we can get that integration kicked off, that just fills the first part of the questionnaire will be a great win for you as well. But Andrew asked a good question too, kind of related to what you just had said. So I'll throw it out to you and especially in those first couple plans, the intimidation factor for you and how you articulate yourself, I think is the most common experience that you want to have answers to all the questions. Now,
Okay.
I'll preface this that you have to be somewhat careful because you can't give legal advice here.
Correct.
You're here as the educator, but you're going to be there when the clients have questions. But if you're, especially the fear I think a lot of people have in those first couple of plans, what if I get a question I can't answer? How do you work with the Encore team to help the client get the information they need beyond what you can provide or want to provide when you're leveraging the knowledge base with the client and or our team provides unlimited support. So talk about your experience working on
Yeah.
our team there to answer Andrew's question.
Okay, so a couple things about that. So one, you're absolutely right. And let me just be very clear. We cannot provide advice. We're not attorney. If I'm yes, at least I'm not, maybe somebody else on the call is. I'm not an attorney. I can't give legal advice, nor do I want to. But what we can do is provide education to clients. And on the Knowledge Center, Encore has some fantastic documents already put together that I just print and put at the table right next to me as I'm having a conversation with a client. So, like, one immediately that comes to mind is there's a comparison chart that talks about what does a beneficiary designation do versus a will versus a trust. And it kind of outlines the scope of where each one of those is beneficial for client. So I'll put that in front of a client as we talk about which document makes sense for them, because at the end of the day, the client has to lead what that decision is. So all that's to say, there's a lot of material that's out there that you can easily brand, like everything has our DFG logo on it, that we put in front of us whenever we're talking with clients to make sure that we don't blur those lines of acting in that legal advice area. We don't want any parts of it. But that said, the client comes in the opposite. Like, I'm always hearing questions that I don't know the answer to. And I feel like that's really an opportunity to enforce what Encore brings to the table. Let me be just very clear with everybody on this call. I do not get any compensation from Encore. I get nothing as a result of the statements that I'm going to make. I'm just a user and one that has seen a lot of benefit. I'm going to speak to some of the benefit that I've seen as an advisor shortly. But I will say any question that I have from Encore, I'm either picking up the phone or sometimes just sending an email. I tend to do a lot of work late at night or early in the morning whenever nobody should be answering the phone. So sometimes I will just send an email over with, this is what a client question was that I got. Can you guide me on how to answer it? Or can you provide me the information that I need? And I will tell you, not only do I receive a response back very, very timely, but it's a response that I can easily just reiterate directly to the client. If I need to, I copy and paste in another email to them. So the level of relationship that I now have with Encore and the confidence that I have with the information that I'm getting back, I have zero hesitations to go back and ask any question that I ever need to. What's also great about that, it just in the spirit of communication, where I was mentioning some of the workflows to make sure that we're checking to see if the documents are done or whatever the steps might be in the process. what I love about Encore, because there could be a point in time where I have a dozen plans going on, a dozen Encore plans at any one point in time, and having to remember when I submitted client A versus client B, I'm never going to remember that. So what I really appreciate is the second that any of my documents are done, Encore sends me an email. Hey, Kristen, great news. Your documents are ready for your review. And that way I don't have to go in proactively and seek them. They're letting me know when my documents are ready, or if the client requested a revision because something changed or they decided on a modification after our discussion. Encore let me know the second that that's all done. So I will say, just in the spirit of the question that was posed there, anytime that I don't feel confident in either the answer or how to deliver that answer, I go directly to the customer service team, and I just have so much confidence in the answer that they're giving back to me, and it's always very timely.
Yeah, that's a little bit how we built this, because we understand very clearly that we're asking advisors to do something new for a lot of them, and providing unlimited support on a platform that we're not even asking for a subscription is really helping us, we believe, move the industry forward by supporting you all. Making you all look good to the client is really, if we don't have your back in that way that you look good for the client, you're not going to do more plans, and we're not going to get paid anything at all. And the clients aren't going to get the plans done. And so that human support was a huge part of what we wanted to build from day one. And so I'm glad you've had great experience with that and the confidence. And so maybe if you looked backwards, I started it here, there, as you were building everything out, what would be some of the other things that you feel like you did well when you launched? Because I think we're talking to a lot of people that are just early in the process building and the launching. What did you do well, and what do you wish you had maybe done different when it was, getting started here?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer your question, but I do want to go back and reflect upon some of the lessons that we learned during that journey, because you
Right.
just hinted at two of them. And I think it's important for others to hear. But if I were to go back and say, if I were starting at square one, what are some of the lessons of what I would have maybe done differently versus what did we do that I found worked for us? And it's a couple things. So, one is, again, while you don't have to have all of the answers all at once, there's enough that you need to know about Encore in order to get started. So, taking a little bit of time, and a little bit of time, quite frankly, doesn't need to be more than a day or two, but taking some time in order to do the mandatory training. So, whether that's something you wanted to speak about, Matt, or not, there is a mandatory training that needs to be done, but making sure that that's taken care of, as well as really just vetting out the knowledge center in order to understand what's available to you, as well as all of the help that's available. In addition to making sure that you understand just how to enter in the data points, how to submit the documents over to Encore, how to reflect on notes for Encore. That's kind of step one, is really just making sure that you take the time to know enough to get started, but not so much that you overwhelm yourself. Kind of number two of that is to rely on the experts. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. It doesn't matter if this is Encore we're talking about. We also do a lot of tax planning with Halista Plan, Click Advisor. I'm not going to pretend that I know every single thing about it. Quite frankly, I don't want to. I just want to know enough so that I could get my job done effectively and efficiently for clients. So relying on your team, it is crucial. Again, I can't tell you how many times I picked up the phone and called Matt or Daniel or the customer service team to just say, can you make sure that I'm understanding this correctly? Or if I have this particular scenario, how do I work through it? And there's been a lot of unique circumstances that have come up that I just picked up the phone or sent an email to make sure that I get the information that I need to. So kind of number two is just making sure that you rely on the experts. And then kind of part three of that is really just to get started, to learn from that process and determine how does that scale within your practice. For us to scale it, it meant having one key person. So again, I'm the director of financial planning. It only made sense for me to be the point person, but me being the point person meant that all 150 individuals within my team don't need to learn everything. Instead, sure, enough of them now know a lot about Encore and they're doing plans on their own. I actually saw one of the participants as my coworker, Lizzie. She's one of my colleagues here at Duncan Financial Group. Lizzie now has done, I think she alone did 15 to 20 Encore plans on her own last year. And she and I just talk about it all the time. Every time one of the plans come up, we're having that conversation. So doing one to understand what you liked about that process, where you could streamline that process. Maybe if you found some challenges in that process, that's the time to reach out to the Encore team to see, is this just a me thing or is this really how it works, so that you can
Yeah.
determine who is the best person to serve in that capacity and find ways to scale that, whether it's through your planning process or workflow. That's really the way that we started with it and the steps that I would absolutely recommend to anybody getting started with Encore moving forward.
Yeah, and you spoke to some things that are really interesting to me there because one of the things we're all focused on is how AI can make us more efficient and we can get more of our time back with what we're doing. And our core belief is that you can do that in today's practice and you can play more golf, or you can do that and you can expand your offerings. But it's funny because I've heard Kitsis now speak at a couple different conferences in the last few months, and he's coming out with all of his advisor survey data. And if you haven't seen this, go follow this. And one of the things that his point is, it is actually having the firms that have staff and that have a team are the ones around them are the ones that are really accelerating and growing their practices. The AI efficiencies are there, but it's not accelerating growth like the firms who are putting people in place. And so obviously, Duncan Financial has said, we're going to invest in financial planning team that you are there in partnership with the advisors. And so tell me about that. Maybe there's firms that are thinking about how do we invest deeper in our team or growing our team to have a director of financial planning and to have paraplanners. Maybe how you've structured the relationship on what the lead advisor does and then where your role when you're supporting multiple advisors, because we're seeing the most successful firms in getting estate planning really implemented have you on their team. And so tell us maybe about that relationship, that workflow, how that's handed off, how the maybe main advisors teeing it up. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And what works for us might not work for everyone,
Mhm.
right? If you're a solo advisor, maybe you don't have the luxury right now of having a planning team. I realize that. But again, there's a lot of benefits to having that point person who just leads the charge on everything Encore related for a number of reasons. I'd say the biggest one being that they just become the expert on your
Mhm.
team. So that said, when it comes to our firm, so again, we have a number of advisors that we work with. And I will say there's really one of two paths on how they ultimately involve me. And it really just depends on their comfort zone. So pathway one is if I'm working with an advisor, like there's a number of advisors, I'll speak about my partner, Brian, for a second. He's done so many estate plans. He knows the question to ask. He knows the quality of the information that he needs to obtain in order to make sure that we have accurate documents. So Brian will just go out, meet with the client without me, have the discussion, collect the information that's needed. And after the meeting, he'll just hand me over the file. We try to leverage it in a very efficient way. So we focus on
Mhm.
technology there. But that said, he gives me all of the information to which I then put the information in. I review the documents to make sure that they align to the information that he provided. I have a quick little check in. And then I schedule a time to have the clients come in, review the documents with them, have them sign them. We actually have notary on staff, so we have the witness and notarize when they're in the office. But I say this because Brian, in that example, he had that introductory meeting. Technically speaking, he just handed everything off to me thereafter so that he spent that 1 hour discussion and didn't have to worry about anything else. Now, kind of option two, though, is we have other advisors that just aren't as confident to have that discussion with the client up front, and that's okay. That's why I'm here on the team. That's why we have a director of financial planning, so that we have one person who can go in and help have those discussions with clients, whether it's estate tax, retirement planning, you name it. So that other type of client or that other type of advisor, excuse me, the part two advisor, what they'll do is they'll have me come in directly from the beginning rather than them collecting the information. I join that meeting and I do that for them. Same thing after that meeting where we collected the information that's necessary in order to put together the documents. I then take that back from the advisor and they can just jump into those meetings as they want to. Some of them like to be there for the execution meeting so that they can tie it back to the wealth management or insurance strategies or just beneficiaries that need to be changed, asset ownership, you name it. But we created this in such a way that the advisor does not need to, so that they can focus their time on another client that meets the
Yeah.
same level of service. Now, I'll use that as an opportunity as well to say, for my team, I then have other individuals on the team that then help us with the data entry. So we've now scaled it to the point where I do the initial review to make sure that we have everything that we need, that it checks into place for what the client is looking for. But I have somebody that does all of the data entry. I then just do a quick final review and then the documents when they come back, so that I'm not touching everything as well, just to make it as seamless and transitional. So there's a number of ways that you could scale it. You can be as involved as you want to, especially if you have somebody on the team, an administrative assistant, somebody in that financial planning role. Again, I'm going to go back to Lizzie. I don't mean to keep picking on her. Lizzie loves to be involved in those discussions. So Lizzie is basically the me in one of our other offices. She has that introductory meeting. She's the one that then enters in the information. She pulls her own documents and then have the client sign. So we will really set it up based upon what the advisor and the client feel most comfortable with, but we do have it set up in such a way that it could just be handed off to really just make it as efficient as possible for everybody involved.
Yeah, that's awesome. Gary asked a good question too here on the how you articulate, and this is part of the process that we've hopefully helped you in the earliest stages of Encore, is going to a client and how do you articulate, we can help you with your estate planning documents when they know you're not an attorney and you can't draft documents, you can't give legal advice. If you could speak to how you all tee it up for the client to understand the lane you're in helping and facilitating, and then also the disclosures. You are with Cambridge. And so Cambridge, I know, has specific disclosures in their financial planning engagement, but you could speak to those a little bit where the client's actually signing that they understand the relationship and your role, but how you articulate that would be helpful.
Good question. So let me talk about how I speak to that with the client first, and then I'll talk about it from the, I don't want to say the word compliance, but like the compliance and how we manage that relationship, because that's very important to hear. So let me start simple, how we set it up with the client. And this actually, I had a client meeting this morning, so I'll just kind of use that same example. So again, we talk about estate planning with every single one of our clients, whether it's a beneficiary review, we're looking at that flow chart, we're looking at existing documents, and estate plan discussion is on every single agenda moving forward. So when we find the time that we have the client need to execute on documents, whether it's a new relationship or an existing client that just has not put their wills in place or needs to update them, we let them know they have really one of two options in order to implement. And we tell them right from the get-go, we are more than happy to make an introduction to an attorney, and we'll give them the three names that we're required to do in order to put together their documents. And we talk about what that looks like, the introduction. It's up to them to make sure that they, while we'll always offer to schedule a meeting, at the end of the day, it's up to the client to make sure that that meeting is taken care of, that the steps are followed, because there's only so much that we can do. So we let them know. One option is to connect with an attorney. Because we worked with so many attorneys locally for so long, we know their price ranges. We give them that as well and let them know like the approximate timeline, etc. Or we say, we're also happy to help you with it, but we're not attorneys. And I tell clients that right from the get-go. Like, you are hiring me to focus on your financial life, not to be an attorney. I'm not an attorney. I always joke with them and say I don't tend to play one on TV. But here's how I can help you. I have a third-party platform partner that helps me put together the documents so that I can bring them to you. Now, my team over at Encore are going to be the ones to put those documents together, but I'm going to go ahead and facilitate that exchange of information so that at the end of the day, you have your will, your revocable trust, your power of attorney, whatever it might be, that you can then sign, execute, and have ready to go. And then I use that as an opportunity to say, here's where the price difference is, and here's where the timeline difference is. So I will always give clients the option. I'm happy to make the introduction and connect you with an attorney, and I'm happy to go ahead and schedule that meeting. In fact, I join as many of those meetings as I possibly can. But then I give them the option of Encore. Again, I tee it up as our third-party platform partner agency that helps us facilitate the implementation of documents, and then we talk through it with them. Now, all that's to say, sometimes it's sure clients want to just have the attorney feel, or maybe they have unique needs that I feel like it's better served for an attorney to be involved in it, and that's perfectly fine. But what's very interesting is as I give those examples to clients, more clients say, well, I'd rather you just help me with it. You know everything relative to my financial life anyway. So that's the route that we go. Now, before I go into kind of the Cambridge requirements, let me just use this as an opportunity to say we work with a lot of attorneys. We always have, and we always continue to do so. Like that's just part of our mantra. We work with a lot of business owners, so we need attorneys to do business succession agreements, buy sell plans, you name it. So for us, we needed to find a way to make sure that attorneys knew that we were going to be helping some of these clients with part of their document needs, but that wasn't necessarily going to interfere with any referrals that we send to them. So that was something that was a little bit nerve-wracking for us because we wanted to make sure that we didn't burn any bridges with attorneys or they thought that we were trying to overstep boundary. So for all of the really important attorney relationships that we have, I actually picked up the phone and called every single one of them and just let them know, like, hey guys, we are now going to partner with Encore for some of the clients that we work with. Therefore, reserving some of the more complex clients, those ones that need irrevocable trust, like I said, the business owner relationship, some that just don't fit the bill for the qualifier questions that Encore asks. And I let them know these are the ones that we're going to send to you. But some of the other clients that mass affluent, we're going to help them with it. And the answer I got was, that's awesome. Like, that's great, Kristen. Like, we want to focus on the ones that are more complex. Those are the ones that we really enjoy. And not a single attorney had a problem with it. So I'll just use that as I felt like that was really key for me. And I wanted to share that. So let me then transfer over to Cambridge. So yes, anytime that you do an Encore plan, or if you use any other estate planning software, or even if you use tax planning, holistic plan, for example, you always have to find a financial planning engagement and send the required disclosures. Now, sidebar, we utilize better proposals to just solidify what it is that we're doing with clients. So we send that to all of our clients after the initial meeting that contains all of our required documents. And then we also send them the financial planning engagement via DocuSign. Now, for us, because we are very planning focused, we never just put together a will-based package, a trust-based package, a powers package, and that's it. We want to look at the big picture, and we don't feel like we could do our best work unless we do that. So I only say that because when we do a financial planning engagement and we're looking at like the scope of service, it's not ever just estate planning. It's also net worth review. It's a cash flow review, maybe tax planning too. Because whenever we're talking to any client, we're also talking about what assets do they have? What's the structure of their assets? What life insurance policies do they have in place? What life insurance policies do they need? So because we're looking at that big picture, and that is a compliance requirement, they don't want us to just go in and pretend like we're acting in an attorney scope, therefore putting together the documents. So it's really important to make sure that you're planning beyond just their estate plan. Now, maybe for some clients, it is just the estate flow chart, the beneficiary and the asset review, etc. But for us, we look at that every single time. Because we're doing that, not only are we maintaining our compliance with everything that Cambridge needs to see, but that's an opportunity then for us to talk further about the assets, maybe the ones that we don't manage, or because now they just told us about these important individuals and we want to protect them. Now we're talking about life insurance or long-term care. So while Encore has really been for us, first and foremost, that implementation tool, it is an incredible prospecting tool for the client that's sitting in front of us. But furthermore, the individual that are then listed within their documents, right? We're then asking for an introduction to make sure that we have a relationship with them. And we use it as, hey, we want to make sure that in the event something were to happen to you, Mr. or Mrs. Client, we have somebody that we can connect with. We want to make sure that we have somebody that we can call to start the process for anything thereafter. But that then leads us to a conversation with their trustee or their executor or maybe their children. So as you brought up kind of the retention of it earlier, sure, that's the spouse, but that's the next gen, that's their executor, that's their trustee, that's their trusted friend. And so it's been this really fun organic process for us because while we started that void with implementation, it's led to a lot of key prospecting, not only with that client, but then their relationships. And it's been very exciting to see. So you started that off, Matt, with a simple question, and
That's the compliance question. And
for that connectivity transpired there.
I love that because it's a compliance. How do you explain this? And how do you obviously document that description and set the context? But you answered it with an also, which was my follow-up question. The two things is you're doing this, number one, to help your clients, you care about them, and delivering comprehensive level planning to their lives. But you kind of where I was going to go next is there's bottom line. You're in a business. You need to be profitable. This needs to make sense. And so I believe you guys are charging a planning fee for your time on this. And so if you can speak to that, but then you kind of hit on the other benefits, which are the referrals, the retention, but it's driving revenue to the bottom line of your firm.
Yeah.
And I would love to maybe hear that too, but I know you also have some good client experiences where the clients were just blown away by how the peace of mind that you solved for in this too. So maybe speak to that in those contexts of the bottom line help to the client. That's a win, a deeper relationship with that client, but then the bottom line business results, that plays into.
So hopefully I make sure I touch on those. If I forget something, Matt, let me know. Step one, yes, we do charge a planning fee. So if it's a brand new client relationship and we're charging a upfront planning fee to them, and we just assume, unless we know otherwise, that their documents will not need to be updated, we embed the cost of Encore right into that. So we kind of just set up our structure to assume that we're going to be helping them with the legal documents. And those are for new relationships. Now, for existing relationships, that it really is just that implementation phase, right? It's somebody that we've been working with for 10 years and they just never updated their documents, or I'm sorry, they never executed their document, or they need to update their documents. We do just charge a very small fee on top of that in order to compensate us for our time. But we don't look at it, our opinion is, we're not going to put food on our table just by doing Encore plans all the time. We look at it to look for other opportunities, right? Just like most other people do for financial plans in general. So because I also am of the mindset if we charge too much more to what Encore's fees are, like then it's starting to rival attorneys. Mm-hmm. And how do you set that level of change whenever we don't have the same credentials that they do? So we charge a minor amount on top of it in order to compensate us for our time. But really, at the end of the day, it's using that as an opportunity to then gather additional assets and insurance. And it's really just structuring the conversation. Again, because we're really peeling back all of the layers and making sure that we look at everything top down, our conversion rate of then acquiring additional assets or insurance opportunities is over 90% for that we're working with. It's pretty significant. So we use that as an opportunity. But for me, I'm a relationship person, right? And I want to make sure that the client is very happy. And it has led, everybody talks about stickier relationships. And of course, this absolutely leads to a stickier relationship. If you're helping a client cross off a to-do item that is so impactful to them, it's something that has just been the bane of their existence for so long, of course they're going to remember that, especially whenever you review it with them every single year thereafter. So sure, that deepened client relationship is significant, but I will say just the ease for us to work with Encore and able to put with clients, like clients remember that, and it just makes it so simple. I'll just use the example of my own parents. For the longest time, my mom and dad have talked about, well, these are the directives that are going to be in our will whenever you need to take over our assets in the future, what have you. And the one day I sat down and I said, hey, Mom, I don't have a copy of your will. I would really feel comfortable just making sure that I do. I'm the oldest child. I won't tell my brothers, but I'm also the favorite. So I'm listed in there as their power of attorney, their executor, you name it. So I asked my parents, Mom, can I have a copy of this just in the event that I need it for anything in the future? And my mom looked at me and she said, Chris, we never did it. We've talked about it, but we never did it. So that night, I printed the Encore questionnaire. I printed a financial planning engagement I owned over my parents' house, and I said, we are doing this. So we are absolutely putting this together. And I'll never forget, she come in the office and she started crying. And she's like, Mom, Chris, I've been wanting to do this. I was so embarrassed to tell you that I did it, but I was so overwhelmed every time I thought about it. Thank you for just doing it for me. And although those are my parents, that's a little bit more personal, those are the client reactions that I receive. Whenever you're able to help with something that in their mind is so insurmountable and you're able to make it so simple for them, that is a win every day.
You've brought up one that I haven't heard anybody speak to, so I'm just gonna ask the question. I have no clue what your answer is bringing this up to your clients to say, do your parents, if they're still alive, have these documents in place? Because that's gonna fall on their shoulders if they
Yeah.
don't, and your client's gonna have to go through it. We've had one advisor who at least does the power of attorneys because when he was young, he was in his early 20s, his father was injured and incapacitated for like 6 months in the hospital. And he had to jump into everything with his mother, and they didn't have any of the power of attorney or healthcare directives of any of that. And so he makes sure his clients go to their parents and say, we can help you with that. But have you brought this up at all to your clients to say, help? Because this is going to fall on you if it's not done.
What? And that's it's funny you say that. I promise this isn't rehearsed, but of late, my team, everybody talks about going generation down in order to
Yeah.
protect your asset, right? But when's the last time you went generation up in order to make sure that the assets that you're talking about, I can't tell you how many client discussions they talk about some potential for a future inheritance. Great, Mr. and Mrs. Client. I hope that that all pans out well, but is everything set up in order to make sure that that passes efficiently for you? Because how many times do us as advisors have clients coming to work with us because they had terrible experiences from the kind of the generation up? So if we can help out other clients alleviate some of those pain points, and sometimes I think I've said beneficiary designation about 20 times in today's discussion because sometimes it is as simple as just having the correct beneficiaries up to date and reviewing it with your clients. But going generation up for that same discussion is incredible. And again, if anybody helps me, like that's a win in my book. But if you help my family members, if you help my kiddos or you help my parents, I will never forget that. And just think about that deepened relationship that you have with clients as a result.
Yeah, it's huge. And I started kind of our conversation to do today sharing my personal family story with my cousins who and aunt who passed away. But I'll ask you the question. Do you think my cousins worked with her advisor? No, they
Right.
didn't. And it wasn't the advisor's fault. She didn't get her,
Correct.
that she didn't go to the attorney and do it. But that level of chaos, it was never a consideration for them to work with that
Yeah.
advisor.
I'll use one more example. And I know I'm getting a little carried away and we're getting to the end of the hour, so I'll be respectful here. This just happened to me this weekend, so I'm gonna share this with you, and I hope I don't get too emotional. But we have a client that for the longest time, it was not a priority for him to put together his documents. He was in great health. He knew what he wanted to happen, but it wasn't on his to-do list. He just wanted to make sure that he had money coming in for retirement. Okay, that's fine. We would keep asking him about it. What happened? That client unfortunately was diagnosed with cancer a couple of months ago. And at that point in time, called me and says, Kristen, I know I put this on the back burner, but we need to get these documents put in place before something terrible happens. Okay, not a problem. I put them together through Encore. It was a will-based package, his financial health care HIPAA release. So make sure that we had everything. Friday, I get a text message via my rep chat because I'm sure somebody from Cambridge is on here from his niece. That client went into hospice. A client, she asked me to come to the hospital, meet with them because that client talked about if anything happens, call Kristen. So I have been in communication with his niece, went to the hospital to visit with him. Unfortunately, we're probably not going to get some positive news here in the future. But now that niece said to me, oh, you helped my uncle with his estate plan? Because she's thinking about, I don't have this put together. And sometimes it is those very difficult conversations that you have, but it leads to the clients see when you're working in their best interest. And that's all we're trying to do at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredibly powerful when you're coming through people in that most critical moment. That I think if my cousins or my aunt had had you as their advisor today, that my cousins, you guys would have been able to come in and say, we've got this taken care of. We're aware of what's in the trust. Here's what we need to do next. Now, you're not the point that you're going to do all the administration and all
Right.
that, but it's done right. You know where to point them. What an opportunity to win, to go generation down to deliver value at that moment of one of the biggest experiences in our lives, overwhelming experience is the loss of a parent. And so, and you're right in the midst of that to deliver value and help the family even beyond. And so thank you for what you do. We created Encore to find partners like you out there, and you're making a difference in the world and across your client base. So super grateful for you for coming today and giving up an hour of your time or even more as you kind of thought about what you're going to say, that to just share with other advisors. We hope this is really helpful to everybody to hear from their peer on that's maybe a couple of years ahead of them on what you've put in place. Thank you for all the questions. We got one on notary. We'll talk about that. You guys have a notary in your office. We also have a notary service through Encore if you don't have that, where you can partner with our nationwide notary service as well. Wanted to throw out to everybody in the last minute here as we're finishing up the conversation is we want to welcome everybody who creates an account to EncorEstatePlans.com. And the first 10 advisors that go in there and create an account, we'll email you a coupon code for 50% off your first plan. Go do your parents' plan or your plan or an advisor's in your office plan. The best experience is when you've done those plans internally. That's the best first plan to do. So we will give you 50% off that first will or trust. The discount code will be emailed over to you. And so we'll finish up there. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. Thank you, Kristen. Again, this has been awesome. I got some great nuggets out of it too. And so grateful to you. Thanks for being a partner. And thanks, everybody. We'd love to partner with you as well. And we'll finish it up there.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Have a good day, guys.
Thanks.